Egyes vélemények szerint a blokklánc-technológia olyan változásokat hozhat az üzleti és hétköznapi életben, amilyenre utoljára az internet megjelenésekor volt példa. Nem véletlen tehát, hogy nagyon sok befektető érdeklődik a blokklánc-technológiák iránt. Erre épít Jeremy Kauffmann is, a LBRY és Odysee CEO-ja. Ő egy videóplatformot hozott létre, ami akár a jövő YouTube-ja is lehet. Még szeptemberben beszélgettünk vele a Brain Bar Fesztiválon, és most egy évvégi bónusz epizódban mesél az ő platformjáról és a jövőbeli lehetőségekről. Én nagyon szépen köszönöm az egész stáb nevében egész éves figyelmed, jövőre a Refekt Podcast folytatódik, ezt az epizódot pedig egy kis magyaros akcentussal fogadd szeretettel. This is Refekt Podcast recorded at Brain Bar Budapest Festival, Hungary. I'm your host, Bent US, and I have a guest now. It's Jeremy Kauffmannal, CEO of LBRY and Odysee. Nice to meet you.
It's great to be here. This is a wonderful festival.
How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I have been talking for 2 hours straight, but I'm ready to keep it going. I'm feeling good. And I just had an espresso, so now I'm even more powered up and ready to go.
There was a girl who first heard about the LBRY and the Odysee in this main stage, and some listeners don't know about LBRY and Odysee. Can you explain what's the idea behind these stuffs?
Sure. So there's sort of two levels to it, and I'll give the easy level first, and if you don't get the second one, you don't need to go past the first one. So the first one is you can go to Odysee.com. We also have mobile apps, and you can have an experience that's better than YouTube. You'll find more independent content, more indie creators. A lot of people say it feels more like YouTube 5 or 10 years ago than YouTube today, which has become very corporate. It's kind of turned its back on the kinds of people who made it big. Odysee is built on top of a blockchain-based protocol called LBRY, or LBRY. And this can get complicated, but LBRY does to publishing what Bitcoin does to money. It lets you stay in control. It lets you have local control over what you're doing. And you can tell me how deep you want to get into how it does all of those things.
Maybe if you speak about how the blockchain system works.
Yeah, so
it's interesting.
Your audience would know Bitcoin?
Yes.
Okay, so basically the same way that Bitcoin works, except the transactions, rather than being pure monetary transactions, you can also issue commands to create an identity, to create what we call a channel. And you can also issue commands to publish content. And so you're actually writing metadata. And metadata is things like the title, who made it, the description. That gets published to the blockchain. Embedded in that metadata is a pointer to basically a peer-to-peer data network. And so what this means is we have a decentralized network, an open decentralized network, that has the same properties of Bitcoin, but that has a user experience like YouTube.
And you have a very good analog as a car and car system. The differences and parallels of LBRY and Odysee.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I sometimes hesitate, depending on the audience, how deep to go, because you start describing how a car works, it gets really intimidating. You don't need to know how a car works to use a car, right? And so Odysee is like driving the car. It's going to be very familiar. You're not going to need to be nerdy or technical or any of these kinds of things to use Odysee. If you want to go deeper, if you want to drive manual, if you want to take your car apart and tinker, then you start getting into the LBRY part.
How many content creators do you have now?
There are more than 1 million channels. There are a lot of big YouTubers who have joined. So there's more than 200 YouTubers with 1 million or more subscribers who are now publishing to Odysee. But there's also lots of indie and smaller channels that are, kind of just up and coming. And it definitely feels like, sort of the next PewDiePie is not going to be on YouTube because they're not amplifying people like that anymore. They're going to be found on a place like Odysee.
And how they will call the Odysseers, or what's the nickname? What you?
Odysseers. I like. Yeah,
Odysseer.
Sure. That's probably come up before. So you can be a librarian, or you can be an Odysseer.
Okay. So, what was the main reason to create a decentralized platform?
Well, I got into Bitcoin, fairly early, and I was really excited about it and what it meant and what it could do. And to me, as a computer scientist, Bitcoin is actually a new type of database technology. It needs to have this financial aspect to empower the database, but what it actually is fundamentally is it's a database. And in Bitcoin, what that does is it keeps track of how much, sort of the balance in everyone's account. And our system does that too. But you can do other things with that database. It doesn't have to be just a financial ledger. And so I started thinking about what are the other things that you could do with that technology. And I've been online for a long time. I've been into sort of peer-to-peer technology for a long time. And I started thinking about, well, what would happen if you took a blockchain and applied it? What could it do in this space? And so it meant that you can have an index of a decentralized network that's also decentralized. That's a brand new property. It means you can add payments to a decentralized data network. That's a brand new property. It means you can add identity to a decentralized data network, which is also a brand new property. So once I started thinking about these things, I couldn't stop thinking about them. And that generally means that it's time to start working on them for me.
And do you remember the moment when you finished the program and, oh, wow,
well,
it's ended?
I didn't write very much of the original version, although I did write a little bit of it, and I was very involved in the creation of it. And our blockchain went live actually almost 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely a very big moment to have the blockchain go live. But when our blockchain went live, it was very bare bones. So you could only you could only use it via command line, so there wasn't even a graphical interface. But it worked. And from there, we've built steadily from, in the early days where maybe 10 people would use it in a day, now 5 million people are using it in a day. And so it's definitely been a wild ride.
And what do you think? You catch the right moment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll say that I didn't anticipate the internet getting as closed off as it's gotten even in the last 5 years, where the standard for being able to publish online is higher than it ever has been. Silicon Valley companies are putting their thumb on the scale more than they ever have. And I will say that I didn't anticipate that happening. I wish I could say that I did. I'm 5 moves ahead. But the truth is that I didn't. And it has basically been good for us because more people are saying, hey, I don't trust these guys. Which they shouldn't.
And you rich now? Are you rich?
Am I? Yes. That's a complicated question. I'm a pragmatic person, but I'm in this for ideals. I'm in this because I care. And so I've certainly had the opportunity to make a lot more money than I have. For the most part, we've put all the money back into the company, and we're trying to grow the company. I think that's ultimately how you achieve the most success.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, how your cryptocurrency and your file sharing platform relates?
The cryptocurrency is used to publish, so you need a small amount to create an identity and to publish each piece of content. Now, we'll give you some just for signing up, and probably, we're talking about, 1 forint or less to publish something or to create identity. It's very cheap, but it is a blockchain transaction, which means that it's not entirely free. That cryptocurrency is also used to pay people. So if you want to tip someone, or if that content has a price attached to it, the cryptocurrency is used for that. And then there's also a staking system where you can use the cryptocurrency to sort of boost other content or to signal that you like certain pieces of content.
So you have a big hangar with a lot of video cards, and you made your own money.
We do not mine the cryptocurrency ourselves. Mm-hmm. We let other people do that, so we're not involved directly in that.
Okay, why use Odysee instead of other platforms? What you guarantee?
Well, we created Odysee because we wanted to make the technology even more available to the general public. So, LBRY was being used by maybe 100,000 people a day, certainly tens of thousands of people a day. Not a crazy huge number, not nothing, but not a crazy huge number. And we realized that if we wanted to really bring it to the mainstream, we needed to make it available in more traditional forms. So in the earlier days of LBRY, you could only access it via a desktop app, a peer-to-peer desktop app. And that app still exists. That app will always exist. It's fundamental to the success of the project that app exists. And that app continues to get better. But most people don't want to download a desktop app to be able to go onto YouTube. So we felt that we had to bring it onto the web. And then when we're bringing it onto the web, we didn't want to call it LBRY because Odysee is not LBRY. Odysee does have some different rules. Odysee is not decentralized. And so we came up with a different brand. And that's why we came up with Odysee.
And your slogan is the free speech.
That's not our slogan, actually. That was
Everybody
the title.
that
was the title of my talk here. I mean, I'll be frank. I'll be honest. We frequently don't even say free speech because it's, at least in the U.S., free speech itself has become a politically coded phrase. I don't know if that's true here or not, but it's not. We using this technology, it's much more about, do you care about personal choice? Do you want to be an owner instead of a renter? Do you want to be in control over your own identity? And these are things that are they're not left-right things. They're not political things. They're things that are appealing to the vast majority of people. And so, if free speech becomes politically coded, and it's funny because in my lifetime, free speech used to be more of a left-coded thing, and now it's become a right-coded thing. And I've seen that happen in my lifetime in the U.S. And I think it might be the other way here. I'm not sure, but it's not about being political. It's about letting people have more control for themselves, and that's not one side of the political aisle that should prefer that. Or you can be completely apolitical and prefer that.
You said the YouTube and the Google was a better place 10 years ago. How you guarantee the Odysee in 5 years later in the future will be the right place for videos or content creators?
That's the beauty of this design, is it means that you don't have to trust us. It seriously is. And it's a weird thing to say that our business, and I've even said this to VCs where I'm like, part of our business proposition is, we've handcuffed ourselves so that we won't, you can trust us. We're not going to assault you or whatever. And so that's a big part of it. So certainly my values, as long as I'm in charge of the company, are going to be, respecting users and being inclusive of what's allowed and being fair and being honest. But even if the company was taken over by people with values antithetical to mine, because everything that we do is open source, and because the entire network is decentralized, and because you are able to own your identity and your following and your content the same way that you can own your Bitcoin, you're not trapped. And so it's how easy is it to switch from, if you use Coinbase, to some other service, or to a paper, or to a local wallet, you can port easily. And so it's almost more like email, even though that's not the sexiest comparison, but in the sense that everything is interoperable and you're never trapped in one particular provider. That's really the design of this. So if Odysee or the parent company became evil, a group of people could spring up and create their own version very easily.
Jeremy, please make an advice for the young people who would like to be a startupper or anything in the future. What soft skills or hard skills or anything what we need to have?
I will answer your question, but since you've asked me to make a suggestion, my first suggestion is to go to Odysee.com and create an account. Okay, and start earning a little bit of cryptocurrency for watching content. There's a lot of great stuff on there. It's in Hungarian, so you can get a Hungarian interface, and so just check it out. But in terms of a startup, if you're interested in sort of starting a startup, I would say that the best thing to do is to have a combination of depth and breadth. So be very good at one thing, and then be decent at a lot of other things. So in my case, that was I'm deep on computer science, but then I went across into things like management and marketing, and not saying I'm an expert at these things, but I'm not not knowledgeable. So to go for deep in one thing, go across. Just another encouragement I have is to just start. Find that itch that you have to scratch. Start making it, start getting people to use it as soon as possible. That general idea of what's my MVP, that's a minimum viable product. That's a very good idea. So figure out how quickly can you make something, and can you get people interacting with it and touching it. No idea survives contact with reality. It will change. I didn't think I was competing with YouTube when I started LBRY, as an example. I thought we were going to be selling like $5 movies, and we saw people like within the first 6 months or a year, like people were doing much more free content, user-generated stuff, and we're like, well, we should probably be doing more YouTube-related approach.
We talked a lot of things about Odysee, but about the platform, which is the main difference, YouTube and differences with Odysee? Because I saw a lot of topics that I can pick and find the right video.
So, I mean, YouTube has terrible policy. You can get demonetized, you can get deplatformed at any time. They're taking 50% of every ad dollar. They're taking 50% or 30% of tips. We're taking 5% on Odysee. So you have a lot more control. You're going to earn a lot more of what you're earning. You're not going to get buried by the algorithm because we don't like you. Our algorithms are open, so they're auditable, so people know that we're not doing these things. Like YouTube has secret scores, and this is not a conspiracy theory. This is well documented. YouTube has secret scores assigned to each channel. And so if they assign you a low, and these are human assigned in many cases, and so if they think that if they don't like your channel, you're just not going to get returned in the results. You're not going to get views. And so we don't do any of those things. The way that we do all of our stuff is open and much more fair.
Jeremy Kauffmannal, CEO of Odysee and LBRY, thank you for the interview.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Ez volt a Refekt, Juhász Bálinttal. További tartalmakért, epizódokért keresd bennünket a Spotify-on, az Apple Podcastben és a további podcast platformokon.